So we continue with the tribe of Ephraim and the understanding of the significant 7th month and this tribe that belongs to this month, for us to understand the prophetic understanding of what the Father is trying to show us in terms of this tribe, which is truly made up of a greater house and not just a little tribe. So if we are going to continue with Joshua, and we're going to be able to look at one of the cities that was actually given to Joshua, to the house of Ephraim, and we go and look at Joshua chapter 24 from verse 1, and Yahushua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and called for the elders of Israel, and for their heads, and for their judges, and for their officers, and they presented themselves before Yahuah. So here he gathers them together. So Shechem is going to be a place of the gathering of the tribes, but Shechem is definitely a place that was given to the house of Joseph. And so we have a look at verse 19. It says, "And then Yahushua said to the people, you are not able to serve Yahuah, for he is a set-apart Eluah, a jealous owl is he. He does not bear with your transgressions and with your sins. If you forsake Yahuah and shall serve mighty ones of a stranger, then he shall turn back to do you evil and consume you after he has been good to you." And the people said to Yahushua, "No, but we do serve Yahuah." Then Yahushua said to the people, "You are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen Yahuah for yourselves to serve him." And they said, "Witnesses. And now put away the mighty ones of the stranger which are in your midst, and incline your heart to Yahuah, Eluah of Israel." And the people said to Yahushua, "Yahuah our Eluah we serve, and his voice we obey." And Yahushua made a covenant with the people that day, and laid on them a law and right ruling in Shechem. Then Yahushua wrote these words in the book of the Torah of Eluah, and he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak that was by the set-apart place of Yahuah. And Yahushua said to all the people, "See, this stone is a witness to us, for it has heard all the words of Yahuah, which he spoke to us, and it shall be a witness against you, lest you die against your Eluah, unless you lie against your Eluah." So here we see that he makes a covenant with the people of Israel. They have received their land, and after this, Joshua dies. But if we look at Joshua 24 verse 32, and it says, "And the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel had brought up out of Mitzrayim, they buried in Shechem, in the plot of ground which Yaakov had brought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 quista, and which they had become an inheritance of the children of Joseph." So Shechem became an inheritance of the children of Joseph. And this is in Shechem. Still today, Shechem is known as Nablus. In 2010, Elsie and I visited the tomb of David, and so we also visited Jacob's well. But this is in the zone of where we really can't go in today, because it's Palestinian territory and we are not able to go there. And it is quite a contentious place with, it's not really allowed for us to be able to go in there. So if we have a look in Genesis 48 verses 21, Yahuah, it was Jacob, when he blessed the children of Ephraim and Manasseh, he spoke to Joseph, and he said that Abba Yahuah will be with him, and he will bring you back to the land of your fathers. So even though Joseph was going to die in the land of Egypt, his bones were going to be taken back into the promised land, and they were laid in Shechem. And so today, like I said, Shechem is known as Nablus. So now we are going to have a look. We'll come back to Shechem again, but we are going to have a look at Rehoboam, and where in Shechem this important place where Joshua spoke to the house of Israel when they were still a house, and what exactly happened in Shechem. So let us go to 1 Kings. So we are going to go to 1 Kings chapter 11, and we're going to read from verse 6. 1 Kings 11 verse 6, and it says, Then Shlomo built a high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill that is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And so he did for all his foreign wives, who burnt incense and slaughtered to their mighty ones. Therefore Yahuah was enraged with Shlomo, because his heart had turned away from Yahuah, Allah of Israel, who had appeared to him twice, and had commanded him concerning this word, not to go after other mighty ones, but he did not guard what Yahuah had commanded. And Yahuah said to Shlomo, Because you have done this, and have not guarded my covenant and my laws, which I have commanded you, I shall certainly tear the rain away from you, and give it to your servant. Only I do not do it in your days, for the sake of your father David. Out of the hand of your son I shall tear it. Only I shall not tear it away. I shall not tear away all the rain, but give one tribe to your son, for the sake of my servant David, for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. So here we see that the rain is going to be taken away from Solomon, because Solomon also did evil in the eyes of the Father by allowing the worshipping on the high places. It was actually Solomon that started all the worship on the high places because of the foreign wives that he married, and he allowed the worship of their foreign gods. So when we get to verse 26 of chapter 11, and it says, And a servant of Shlomo, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, an Ephraimite, from Tzereda, whose mother's name was Teruah, a widow, also lifted up a hand against the sovereign. And this is what caused him to lift up a hand against the sovereign. Shlomo had built Shiloh, repairing the breaks in the city of David his father. And the man Jeroboam was a brave man, and Shlomo, seeing that the young man was doing his work well, made him the officer over all the compulsory labor of the house of Joseph. And it came to be that at that time, when Jeroboam went out to Jerusalem, that the prophet Yahuah, the Shilonite, met him on the way, and he was wearing a new garment, and the two were alone in the field. And Yahuah took hold of the new garment that was on him, and tore it into 12 pieces, and said to Jeroboam, Take for yourself 10 pieces, for thus said Yahuah, the Allah of Israel, See, I'm tearing the rain out of the hand of Shlomo, and shall give 10 tribes to you. So you see, beloveds, this is where the 10 tribes of the house of Israel comes from. But he shall have one tribe for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, and the city which I have chosen out of the tribes of Israel, because they have forsaken me, and bow themselves to Ashtaroth, and the mighty one of the Sidonians, to Chemosh, the mighty one of the Moabites, and to Milcom, the mighty one of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways, to do what is right in my eyes, and the laws, and my right rulings, as did his father David. But I do not take all the rain out of his hand, because I have made him ruler all the days of his life, for the sake of my servant David, whom I chose, because he guarded my commands and my laws. And I shall take the rain out of his son's hand, and give it to you, the 10 tribes, and to his son I give one tribe. so that my servant David shall always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen for myself to put my name there. So understand, here is the fulfillment of that which the Father spoke over the tribe of Ephraim, that Ephraim, especially to Joseph, that he said about the crown. So he's going to become king over these 10 tribes of the house of Israel. The Father chose this Jeroboam, an Ephraimite, to raise him up, to be doubly blessed, to be able to be a king over the 10 tribes of the house of Israel. So he gets given the opportunity to rule over 10 of the tribes, because Shlomo did not do what was right in the Father's eyes, and he was going to take the kingdom from Rehoboam, which was going to do even worse than his father. And this is now where the kingdom is going to get split. So I take you, and you shall reign. So I take you, and you shall reign over all that being desires, all your being desires, and you shall be sovereign over Israel. And it shall be, if you obey all that I command you, and shall walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes, to guard my laws and my commands, as my servant David did, then I shall be with you, and build for you a steadfast house, as I built for David, and shall give Israel to you. And because of this, I humble the seed of David, but not forever. So you see, here we see how Ephraim was going to become, Israel would become Ephraim, because this Jeroboam of the tribe of Ephraim was going to be able to be a ruler, a king, with the crown over the house of Israel, and there was going to be a split between the house, and the father's the one who brought the split, because of the wickedness of their hearts, because they did not obey or follow the Father. And so we have a look and we see, and then he says, and Shlomo sought to kill Jeroboam, but Jeroboam rose up and fled to Mitzrayim, to Shishak, sovereign of Mitzrayim, and was in Mitzrayim until the death of Shlomo. So here we see, what does Jeroboam do? When Jeroboam comes under pressure, where does he go? So now Solomon wanted to kill him, and because now obviously there's a jealousy that comes in him. He's heard from the Father. The Father has told him he's going to take the kingdom from him and give it to his servant. But instead, Jeroboam, instead of going on his knees and praying and trusting the Father, he's just had a mighty prophetic word from the prophet, who has told him that he's the one that's going to be able to rule over these 10 tribes. And what does he do? He goes and finds asylum in Egypt, because at the end of the day, he's going back to that which is in his blood from his mother, and from the fact that Ephraim was born in Egypt. So we look at chapter 12, and it says, and Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone to Shechem to set him up to reign. And it came to be that when Jeroboam son of Nebat heard this, he was still in Mitzrayim, for he had fled from the presence of the sovereign Shlomo, and had been dwelling in Mitzrayim, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the assembly of Israel came and spoke to Rehoboam, saying, your father made our yoke hard, and now lightened the hard service of your father and his heavy yoke, which he put on us. Then we serve you. And he said to them, go away for 3 days, then come back to me. And the people went. So then if we go to verse 12, it says, and Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the 3rd day, as the sovereign had spoken, saying, Come back to me the third day. But the sovereign answered the people harshly and ignored the advice which the elders had given him. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men. So he sought the counsel of the advisors from his father, the older men, and he sought the advice of the younger men, but he didn't take the advice of the older men. He took the advice of the younger men. And the people harshly and ignored advice from the elders that had given him. And he spoke to them according to the advice of the young men, saying, My father made your yoke heavy, but I add to your yoke. My father flogged you with the whip, but I flog you with the scourges. So the sovereign did not listen to the people, for the turn of the events was Yahuah, in order to establish his word, which Yahuah had spoken by Ahijah, the Shilonite, to Jeroboam, son of Nebat. And all Israel saw that the sovereign did not listen to them. Then the people answered the sovereign, saying, What portion do we have in David? And there is no inheritance in the son of Yeshai. To your mighty ones, O Israel, now see your own house, O David. So Israel went to their tents. So from verse 19, it says, Thus Israel revolted against the house of David to this day. And it came to be, when all Israel heard that Jeroboam had come back, they sent for him and called him to the congregation and set him up to be sovereign over Israel. There was none who followed the house of David except the tribe of Yehudah only. And Rehoboam came to Jerusalem, and he assembled all the house of Yehudah with the tribe of Benjamin. So it's only those two tribes. It was only Benjamin and Judah, and that's why they would be a small tribe. But the Father allowed them to remain on the throne as the house of Judah for the sake of David, because Yahushua was going to come out of the tribe of Yehudah. And with the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 chosen brave men to fight against the house of Israel, to bring back the reign to Rehoboam, son of Shlomo. But the word of Yahuah came to Shemaiah, the man of Yahuah, saying, Speak to Rehoboam, son of Shlomo, sovereign of Yehudah, and to all the house of Yehudah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, saying, Thus said Yahuah, do not go up or fight against your brothers, the children of Israel. Let every man return to his house, for this matter is for me. So they obeyed the word of Yahuah and turned back according to the word of Yahuah. And Jeroboam built Shechem in the mountains of Ephraim and dwelt there. And he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, Now the reign shall return to the house of David. If these people go up to do slaughterings in the house of Yahuah at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people shall turn back to their master, Rehoboam, sovereign of Yehudah, and they shall kill me and go back to Rehoboam, sovereign of Yehudah. So the sovereign took counsel and made 2 calves of gold and said to the people, Is it too much for you to go up to Jerusalem? See your mighty ones, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim. Now here is the saddest account that we see, where here is Jeroboam that has been anointed by the prophet. The prophet has come to him. The prophet has told him. The people have hailed him as king. The people are looking for a leader. And the prophet has anointed him by the mouth of Abba Yahuah to tell him that he's giving him these 10 tribes and he's giving him this kingdom of the house of Israel. And what does Jeroboam do? Jeroboam goes into those altars that is in his heart of his insecurities, of the fact that he's got this jealousy against Judah, and the fact that now he was worried because these people are now going to go and serve Jeroboam going back to, he had just seen that they had just said they don't want to be able to serve under Jeroboam because the order that he was going to give was going to make it more difficult for them. The taxes that they had to pay and the slavery that was being put on them, they didn't want it. But instead of him being secure, do you see how the idols that is in our hearts, the insecurities in our lives, the envy, the jealousy, the things that are there, those idolatrous things in our lives, if we do not deal with them, if we are not secure in the word of Yahuah, if we are not secured in the identity that Yahuah has given us, when we raise up leaders, that's why so many leaders fall. Because when they start to raise up, they are insecure in who they are and in who the Father's called them to be. And instead of them looking to the Father and staying focused on the assignment that the Father has given them to be able to walk out, they start looking at other leaders and start looking at other people, and they go into insecurities and envy and jealousy. And this is what brings about the fall within the body of the Messiah, because it becomes competitiveness. And here we see the sin that came through Jeroboam, that was going to be, he was given a firstborn blessing, because even though Joseph was not the firstborn, but he was the firstborn that came out of Rachel. So out of Rachel's womb was a Joseph company of Joseph came forth, and he also carried a blessing of the firstborn, even though he was not the firstborn son of Jacob, but he was the firstborn son of Rachel. And the Father blessed him. And that is for us to see that throughout those two tribes, throughout Judah and the tribe of Joseph, there comes the whole time, Father raises up Joseph as the one that becomes the deliverer, that is going to deliver the people. And he gives him a mighty, mighty blessing of double portion. And it's his two sons that get added to Jacob. But yeah, you see, because of the idolatry in the heart, where we are not willing to lay down the flesh, this is what comes in. And he set up one in Beit El. So what does he do? He sets up a temple, and he set up one in Beit El and the other in Tel Dan. And so we have been to both these places where he set up a temple for the people. And this was in the north. And this matter became a sin, for the people went before the one as far as Dan, and he made the house of high places and made priests from all sorts of people who were not of the sons of Levi. And Jeroboam performed a festival on the 15th day of the 8th new moon, like the festival that was in Yehudah, and he offered on the slaughter place. So he did in Beit El, slaughtering to the calves that he had made at Beit El. He appointed the priests of the high places which he had made. So do you see, in his heart, there's still the gods of Egypt that have not been dealt with. The gods of the golden calf that already came from when they were living in Egypt. That golden calf, idolatrous idol, has followed Jeroboam, and he's never dealt with it. And he made offerings on the slaughter place, which he had made at Beit El, on the 15th day of the 8th new moon, in the new moon which he had devised in his own heart. Then he goes and he sets up his own feasts. And this is exactly where the house of Ephraim, that is seen as the nations, and this is where the nations are, where they have set up their own idolatrous system. They have made their own golden calf Christianity, in a way that they have feasts that of Easter, feasts of Christmas, Mother's Day feasts, Father's Day feasts, Halloween, Valentine's Day, all these feasts that are not the Father's feasts. They celebrate instead of celebrating Passover, they celebrate feasts of Easter to the goddess Ishtar. And then they celebrate Christmas, which is at the winter solstice, which they put Christmas trees and all these things that come from the pagan rituals that already comes all the way from Semiramis and Nimrod, that comes down at this whole Babylonian system, and that is in the heart of Jeroboam. And so he, just the same as here you get a Sunday church celebrating Sunday worship on a Sunday for the sun god, because this is still what is there. We have not come and broken with the mixed seed of the religions of Egypt that came out of Babylon, that has been there, that has been passed down right from Nimrod, that came from when they built the Tower of Babel to bring the confusion of all this religious confusion. And these are these golden calves that get built. And so here we see that when we see in chapter 13 from verses 32, and it says, for the word which he cried out by the word of Yahuah against the slaughter place in Beit El, and against all the houses of the high place which are in the cities of Shemaron, shall certainly come to be. After this event, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, but again he made priests from all sorts of people. So if we go back, let me just go back in 1 Kings chapter 13 from verses 15. And he said to him, come home with me. Oh, not there. If we have a look, the prophet is now going to go in order to be able to speak up against Jeroboam, is going to speak up against Jeroboam. And so this is where we see in verse 32 that the word which he cried out by the word of Yahuah against the slaughter place in Beit El, against all the houses of the high places which are in the cities of Shemaron. So Shemaron is going to be what we are going to understand in Shechem, shall certainly come to be. After this event, Jeroboam did not turn from his evil way, but again he made priests from all sorts of people for the high places. Whoever wished, he ordained to become one of the priests of the high places. And this matter was sin of the house of Jeroboam, even to cut it off and destroy it from the face of the earth. And so Abiah, the son of Jeroboam, at the time of Abiah, the son of Jeroboam became sick. And Jeroboam sent his wife. So he sends his wife to be able to go to the prophet and to be able to go and speak to the prophet because his son is sick. And by verse 6 it says, and it came to be when Yahuah heard the sound of his footsteps as they came through the door, he said, come in, wife of Jeroboam. Why are you making yourself strange? And I have been sent to you with a hard word. Go to Jeroboam, thus said Yahuah, Allah of Israel, because I exalted you from among the people and made you ruler over my people Israel, and tore the reign away from the house of David and gave it to you, and you have not been as my servant David, who guarded my commands, who followed me with all his heart to do what was right in my eyes. This is all that the Father has wanted, was there to be a leader, to be able to follow him, to do what is right in his eyes, like David. Now do you understand why David was a man after the Father's heart? Even though David had faults in him and he fell, but yet he repented and he loved the Father and he kept the Father's ways and he loved the Father's Torah. You just need to read Psalm 119 to be able to establish that. But you have done more evil than all who were before you. For you have gone and made for yourself other mighty ones, and molded images to provoke me, and have cast me behind your back. Therefore, see, I am bringing evil to the house of Jeroboam, and shall cut off from Jeroboam every male in Israel, whether shut up or left at large, and sweep away the remnant of the house of Jeroboam, as one sweeps away dung until it is all gone. Those of Jeroboam who died in the city, the dogs to eat those who die in the field, the birds of the heavens to eat, for Yahuah has spoken. So here we see that because of this, that Jeroboam has done, and we read in now verse 15, and it says, and Yahuah shall strike Israel as a reed is shaken in the water, and shall pluck Israel from this good soil which he gave to their fathers, and shall scatter them beyond the river, because they made their Asherim provoking Yahuah. So you see, now he takes them, and they're going to be dispersed into the outermost parts of the earth, which is already what had been spoken to Joseph when the blessing came, that he will be extending in the nations. And he shall give Israel up because of the sins of Jeroboam, who sinned and made Israel sin. And so from here we are going to see, as then from one king to the next king, and until you're going to get to King Ahab with Jezebel, and so the kingdom of Israel just becomes more and more wicked. And so here we see how the Father had already spoken in the time of Shlomo. And so because of Solomon, this kingdom was split, and to this day, the kingdom has been split. And this is what we need to understand. So from then onwards, there became kings of the house of Judah, and then kings of the house of Israel. And these kings, then there was never again basically Shlomo was the last king that was the king over the fullness of the house of Israel, because after that, from Jeroboam and Rehoboam, the house was split and they became two houses. And to this day, they have never been one house. So even today, what you see living in the land of Israel is only made up of the house of Judah and the house of Benjamin, because they are the ones that stayed faithful to Torah. But yet, even as we read through the prophets, we will see how the Father sent prophet after prophet after prophet, because the house of Israel and the house of Judah did evil in the Father's eyes. But praise the Father that there has been blessing. There is blessing that will come. So we praise the Father that we know that even though there is all of the fact that the house of Judah and the house of Israel have both done evil in the eyes of the Father, but he has sent us a deliverer. So let us go to John chapter 4, where we are going to go and see how Yahushua comes for the lost tribes of the house of Israel. That is what the word says. Yahushua spoke and said, I came for the lost tribes of the house of Israel. When did Yahushua's ministry start? Yahushua's ministry started not in the southern kingdom. It started in the northern kingdom, because from the northern kingdom that they were going to be dispersed until the outermost parts of the earth. That is where he was going to disperse them to. And there were a few occasions that in the time of the kings, like in King Ahaz of Judah, that there was a sort of a revival. And if we have a look, that in the time of Asa, there was also revival, and that spread to Ephraim, and they removed the idols, and even the strangers that were amongst Ephraim, they too were affected by this revival. And Jehoshaphat brought people from the tribe of Ephraim into the awakening, and he brought them back to Abba Yahuah and to his ways. So we read about this in Chronicles, Chronicles chapter 15, and then Chronicles chapter 19. And then we have a look at King Hezekiah in 2 Chronicles chapter 30. And that was also 2 Chronicles chapter 15 and chapter 19. And then we get under King Hezekiah. Once again, the Ephraimites start to come. And then there's revival again under King Josiah. But the problem is, if they did not have the right leaders, they would be led astray. So, beloveds, do you see how important it is, a leader? You know, and this is something that I said, not yesterday, the day before, to our spiritual meeting, that we had a spiritual leaders meeting of our town with the captain of the police, and we are coming together in unity in order to want to pray for our town. And basically what the Father showed me is that we are gatekeepers. We as the leaders, the spiritual leaders in the town, are gatekeepers. That which we allow in our own lives, we open our town up to. So as a leader, now listen carefully, that which the leader allows into their lives opens the people up to destruction. Because this is what we see. This is what happened with Jeroboam. This is what happened with Rehoboam. This is what happened with Solomon. This is what happened with most of the kings. If you're going to read through 1 Kings and 2 Kings, you will see that it is so sad. Between the kings of Israel, between the kings of Judah, you see how they do wicked in the eyes of the Father, and based on the fact that they are not willing to keep the Father's ways, they lead the people astray. So that is why it is so important, the leadership that we have that is over our lives. And so if we have a look now at John chapter 4, and this, we saw that Shechem was the very place where they gathered together. And when Yahushua came, like I said, he went into the northern kingdom. And here you see again, Yahushua comes to a well. And the woman of Shamaron. So let's go look at John chapter 4 from verses 9. The woman of Shamaron therefore said to him, how is it that you, being a Yehudi, ask a drink from me, a woman of Shamaron? For Yehudim do not associate with the Shamaronim. And so here we see Shamaron was the same place of where Jeroboam would have resided, and this was in Samaria, and these were the Samaritans, and yet they were part of those lost tribes. And what does Yahushua do? This is how we see how Yahushua comes to bridge the gap between these tribes, constantly standing in bringing the tribes together. And so he says, Yahushua answered and said to her, if you knew the gift of Yahuah and who it is who says to you, give me to drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. So remember, this is at the place where the tribes were split. So at the very place where the tribes split is the very place where Yahushua now comes and gives water to drink, because from the tribe of Yosef, there's going to be the drinking at the fountain, the waters of the fountain. And so here he's at a fountain, and Yahushua is speaking to a woman that would have been a Samaritan, but she would have come from those lost tribes of the house of Israel. And the woman said to Master, you have no vessel, and the well is deep. From where then do you have living water? Are you greater than our father Yaakov, who gave us the well and drank from it himself and his sons and his cattle? So do you see, she was a woman that they knew that Yaakov was their father. Yahushua answered and said to her, everyone drinking of this water shall thirst again, but whoever drinks of the water I give him shall certainly never thirst. And the water that I give him shall become in him a fountain of water springing up into everlasting life. The woman said to him, Master, give me this water so that I do not thirst, nor come here to draw. Then in verse 21, Yahushua said to her, Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you shall neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, because the deliverance is of the Yehudim. The deliverance, Yahushua, is going to come from the Yehudim. But the hour is coming, and now is, when true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So there are going to be true worshippers. So the Father is going to take true worshippers out of the house of Israel, and he's going to take true worshippers out of the house of Judah, and out of there is going to become a people that will be a worshipping people unto the Father that will worship him. Yahuah is spirit, and those who worship him need to worship him in spirit and in truth. And so those are that's going to be the fullness of the house, because he is going to gather a remnant in this time. And let us go look at Isaiah chapter 11. Let's go look at Isaiah chapter 11. Let us first actually read Psalm 78. And we're going to read from verses 6 so that we can understand exactly what has happened in what we have read. So he says, verse 5, Psalm 78, verse 5, For he raised a witness in Yaakov and set a Torah in Israel, which he commanded our fathers to teach them to their children, that it might be known to a generation to come, to children who would be born, to raise up and relate them to their children, and place their trust in Yahuah, and not forget the work of Al, but watch over his commands, and not be like their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation, a generation which did not prepare its heart, whose spirit was not steadfast to Al. The children of Ephraim, armed bowmen, turned back in the day of battle. They did not guard the covenant of Yahuah, and they refused to walk in his Torah, and they forgot his deeds. So this is exactly what we saw, what Jeroboam did, and his wonders which he had done, which he had showed them. So here we see that this is exactly what Jeroboam landed up doing. And in verse 67 it says, Then he rejected the tent of Joseph and did not choose the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Yehudah, Mount Zion, which he loved. Because why? Because when the time came, he gave Ephraim an opportunity to rule over the 10 tribes. He just didn't give him to rule over the fullness of the house, but he gave them to rule over 10 tribes. And what did he do? He led them astray. So in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 13, let's go to Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 11, verses 13, and it says, And the envy of Ephraim shall turn aside, and the adversaries of Yehudah be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Yehudah, and Yehudah not trouble Ephraim. So right now, as we stand, the Ephraimites, Ephraim would have a jealousy towards their brother Judah, because they have the right to be in the land of Israel, Eretz Israel, because they can prove by a mother, a father, a grandmother, grandfather, that they are from the house, and they are Jews, And so according to the state of Israel, you can be a Buddhist. It doesn't matter. If you can prove that your mother or your father or your grandmother, grandfather, great-grandmother, great-grandfather were Jewish, and you have the proof, you may return back to the land. It is your land. But if you are a Christian, if you are a Messianic believer Jew, you will not be allowed, because they say that you are an enemy of the state. And that is why the house of Israel, which is symbolic of Ephraim, is not able to return right now. Let's look at Jeremiah chapter 31. Jeremiah chapter 31 verses 6 says, "For there shall be a day when watchmen cry on Mount Ephraim, Arise, let us go up to Zion, to Yahuah our Lord." So right now, as we're returning back to the land of Israel, there is a cry going out from Ephraim that is returning back and wanting to be able to dwell in the land that they know is their land. But they are those that have cried and that have repented, like it's spoken of in the book of Hosea. I truly encourage you to read the book of Hosea and to repent through the book of Hosea, because the book of Hosea is really where the father divorces Ephraim, but he takes her back, this wayward prostitute wife, and takes her back. And then he will be able to then, in chapter 2, he says, I will remove your lovers from you. I will hem you in. I will take away your solemn assemblies, your feasts and your gatherings. Your new moons and your Sabbaths, I will remove that from you. I will remove the bold names from your lips, and I shall be a husband to you. So, if we look at verse 9, it says, with weeping they shall come, and with their prayers I bring them. I shall make them walk by rivers of waters, in the straight way in which they do not stumble. For I shall be a father to Israel, and Ephraim, he is my firstborn. So do you see, somehow the father sees them as being his firstborn. That is what he speaks of Ephraim. You are my firstborn. In verse 18 of Jeremiah 31, verse 18, I have clearly heard Ephraim lamenting. You have chastised me. I was chastised like an untrained calf. Turn me back, and I shall turn back, for you are Yahuah my Eloah. So you see Ephraim crying out, and that's what we as the nations need to be doing, returning back to his Torah, returning back to his way. We are those now coming back to what we did not follow and saying we will take up the mantle and we will come back. Because we are the prodigal son that is going to return. So then, if you read in Jeremiah 31 from verses 31, see, the days are coming, declares Yahuah, when I shall make a renewed covenant with the house of Israel, Israel being Ephraim, and with the house of Yehudah, not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I strengthened their hand to bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim. My covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahuah. For this is the covenant that I shall make with the house of Israel. After those days, declares Yahuah, I shall put my Torah. So with the house of Israel, Ephraim, I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Eloah, and they shall be my people. So he will put his Torah within, he will give us his spirit, and he will write his Torah in our hearts, and we will do it. And no longer shall they teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, Know Yahuah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Yahuah. For I shall forgive their crookedness and remember their sin no more. So then, if we look at Jeremiah chapter 32, and this is the things of the end times, and this is what the Father still got to do. So understand, what you see in Israel is not the fulfillment. It's only when the full house comes together that will be the fulfillment. Because the fulfillment is not made up of two tribes. The fulfillment needs to be made up of the fullness of the house. And the fullness of the house will only come when Messiah Yahushua is the one who is king over the tribes. And so here we see in Jeremiah chapter 32, in verse 37, see, I'm gathering them out of the lands where I have driven them into in my displeasure and in my wrath and in great rage, and I shall bring them back to their place and shall let them dwell in safety, and they shall be my people and I shall be their Lord. And I shall give them one heart and one way to fear me all the days, for the good of them and for their children after them. And I shall make an everlasting covenant with them, that I do not turn back from doing good to them. And I shall put my fear in their hearts, so as not to turn aside from me. And I shall rejoice over them to do good to them, and shall plant them in this land in truth with all my heart and with all my being. For thus says Yahuah, as I have brought all this great evil on this people, so I am bringing on them all the good that I am speaking to them. So there we go. But he's going to plant us in the land in truth, not in lies. So it cannot be the fullness if it's still in lies. It's going to have to be the fullness when it is in truth. So let's go and finish up with Ezekiel chapter 37. In Ezekiel chapter 37, which is the most beautiful scriptures, and we see Ezekiel sitting before these bones, these dry bones, and in verse 5 it says, and thus says the Master Yahuah to those bones, see, I'm bringing into you spirit, and you shall live, and I shall put sinew on you. So I just want to read it from the beginning. And the hand of Yahuah was upon me, and took me out of my spirit of Yahuah, and set me down in the midst of the valley, and it was filled with bones, and he made me pass among them all around, and see, there were very many on the surface of the valley, and see, they were very dry. And he said to me, Son of man, would these bones live? And I said, O Master Yahuah, you know. Again he said to me, prophesy to these bones, and you shall say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of Yahuah. Thus said the Master Yahuah to these bones, see, I'm bringing into you a spirit, and you shall live. And I shall put sinew on you, and flesh, and bring flesh upon you, and cover you with the skin, and put spirit in you, and you shall live, and you shall know that I am Yahuah. And I prophesied as I was commanded, and I prophesied, there was a noise, and there was a rattling, and the bones came together, bone to bone. And I looked, and I saw sinews, flesh come upon them, and skin covered them, but there was no spirit in them. And then he said to me, prophesy to the spirit, prophesy, son of man, and you shall say to the spirit, thus says the Master Yahuah, come from the four winds, O spirit, and breathe on these killed ones, so they live. And I prophesied at the command, as he commanded me, and the spirit came into them, and they lived, and stood up upon their feet, a very great army. And he said to me, Son of man, these bones are all the house of Israel. See, they say, our bones are dry, our expectancy has perished, and we ourselves have been cut off. Therefore prophesy, and you shall say to them, thus said the Master Yahuah, see, O my people, I am opening your burial sites, and shall bring up from your burial sites, and shall bring you into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am Yahuah when I open your burial sites, my people, and bring you up from your burial sites. And I shall put my spirit in you, and you shall live, and I shall settle you in your own land. And you shall know that I, Yahuah, have spoken, and I have done it, declares Yahuah. And the word of Yahuah came to me, saying, and you, son of man, take a stick for yourself, and write on it, for Yehudah and for the children of Israel, his companions. Then take another stick and write on it, for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. Then bring them together for yourself into one stick, and they shall become one in your hand. And when the children of your people speak to you, saying, won't you show us what you mean by these? Say to them, thus says the Master Yahuah, see, I am taking the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his companions, and I shall give them unto him with the stick of Yehudah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in my hand, and the sticks on which you write shall be in your hand before their eyes, and speak to them. Thus says the Master Yahuah, see, I am taking the children of Israel from among the nations wherever they have gone, and shall gather them from all around, and bring them into their land. So, beloveds, this is not only for Jews. This is going to be when the fullness of the house of Israel is going to come together under one king. And I shall make them one nation in the land on the mountains of Israel, and one sovereign shall be sovereign over them all. And let them no longer be two nations, and let them no longer be divided into two reigns. And they shall no longer defile themselves with their idols, nor with their disgusting matters, nor with any of their transgressions. And I shall save them from all their dwelling places in which they have sinned. And I shall cleanse them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their Yahuah. And so here we see the Father is going to bring the fullness of the house. And so in Isaiah, I just want to finish with this. In Isaiah chapter 43, and this is the promise of what he says. Do not remember, Isaiah 43 verses 18. Do not remember the former events, nor consider the events of old. See, I'm doing what is new. Let it now spring forth. Do you not know it? I am even making a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. The beasts of the field esteem me, the jackals and the ostriches, because I have given waters in the wilderness and rivers in the desert, to give drink to my people, my chosen. This people I have formed for myself, let them relate my praise. And Joseph, the stronghold, because Joseph in the time of the millennial reign will be in the east gate with Benjamin and Dan, and the stronghold of Joseph will be infirmity, but the redemptive gift is worship. So there will be a worshipping people that will arise and come through. And the fullness of the house of Israel that will be under Joseph will be able to be then these two tribes that will become one house, the 10 lost tribes, together with Judah and Benjamin, will make up the fullness of the house of Israel. And then we shall return to our land, be one house, a remnant bride, to serve Abba Yahuah in spirit and in truth. Because those will be the true worshippers that will worship him in spirit and in truth. May Abba Yahuah bless you all. Thank you, Abba, for your word.